Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. I'm Patrick, the founder and CEO of Pod. Today I'm super thrilled to be joined by someone who's spent his whole career in sales, starting from the Windows 95 days. He's experienced all the highs and the lows of a salesperson throughout the last 30 years plus in the position, going from account executive to sales rep to director to regional sales manager to sales leader. And he's now doing amazing work with startups and SMBs as an advisor and consultant with his own firm, Growthlistic. Elliot Grossbard, thank you for joining us. Good afternoon. How are you?
Good. I'm not wearing a parka, unlike you. So, based in Miami, we have some perks, but I'm doing great. I was looking forward to this for about 3 weeks. So, I'm happy to be finally connecting with you and speaking to you directly. I'm so excited to be doing this.
I'm excited for the conversation as well. A few things that I'm excited to talk about today, growth themes for 2025 within SMBs, which I know is your bread and butter, challenges of growing a B2B sales team, the challenges of AI adoption in smaller and SMB organization. I think those are all things that are top of mind amongst sales leaders, but also individual sales rep. But before we get started, I always like to ask that question, what got you into sales at a first point, right? What kept you in the sales industry, and how do you get excited every single day living and breathing the world of revenue?
I never thought I would be a salesperson because when you're in your, early teen years, you're dreaming, most people are dreaming of being a firefighter or, this day and age, the next Mr. Beast. But when I was 12 or 13, I wanted to be the first Jewish Jordan. That was my goal. And in a suburb of Detroit, Michigan, we had to pay money to watch the Pistons play basketball. So I watched for free because it was included with cable, all the Chicago Bulls games. And I fell in love with the poetry in motion that was also called Michael Jordan. And I really thought that I was going to really give it a shot. And my dad said at one time, "You're going to be a salesperson." And I said, "No way, I'm not going to be selling used cars with a sharkskin suit and on, the infomercials." Because at 12 years old, that's what you think a salesperson is, right?
That's the imagery that you get from media or movies, right? The
Exactly.
sleazy salesman. Yeah.
Well, although I was playing with people 5, 6 years older than, me, that was the age of my older brother. When I stopped growing at 5'8", even though I could dunk on a 9.5, maybe two-handed dunk, 10-foot rim, I realized that's not going to happen. And I asked my dad 4 or 5 years ago when I was 16, 17 years old, I love playing basketball, but I know it's not realistic. Why did you say that I was going to be a salesperson? And I sort of was upset. Like, even 5 years later, the idea of what a salesperson was didn't change. And he said, sales is about connecting with other people. And you naturally connect with other people, whether they're in their 80s, 90s, or they're your camper in day camp. You make them feel that you are there and present with them, right? If only I could do that with, with my wife, because I'm always looking at other things.
That's a different story.
But naturally, I like learning about other people, and I didn't get it until I had to go out and get my first job. And back then, PCs were just coming up. You mentioned Windows 95. You open up the classifieds. The classifieds, guys, used to be a newspaper. You used to open it up, and in the back, that's where all the Craigslist ads back in the day were. It was printed. And you circle all the jobs. And the majority of jobs that were open that were not requiring rocket science degrees or masters in, physics were sales. And that's why I really started in sales. It was more of a necessity. It was the lowest hanging fruit to start making money after I was married for about a year. But my dad always was in the back of my head, and he still is today.
Oh, I think that's it goes to the essence of what sales truly is. At the end of the day, it's the ability to not just make connections with people, but actively listen and have an inherent curiosity and willingness to help. And I think that's as much as there's different types of selling, right? There's a consultative seller, there's a pressure sellers, there's a lot of different ways to sell, but at the end of the day, you have to be energized by connecting with folks. And wanted to build the relationship, right? Whether it ends up being a transaction or not. So I think that's great. I mean, I guess your father knew you better than yourself, which is often the case, or at least is the case with my father as well.
But
That's
Patrick, if you
awesome.
think about it, every person is a salesman or a saleswoman.
In some
Our
way, shape, or form.
teachers, sold and sell us. Our parents sold us, and we know we sold our parents hard, right?
Yeah,
Our partners, you going on dates, your
to
friends, your
sell.
employers, everyone is a salesperson.
Yeah,
It's not I don't believe in selling. Yes, there are sales
so
and there are selling, but you can do it without being sold. The point is,
yeah,
and I'll take this from Jeffrey Gitomer, who was the first author that I read specializing in sales with the Little Red Book of Selling. That opened up my world, by the way.
Hmm.
People don't like to be sold, but they love to buy.
yeah,
So make it as easy as possible for them to buy.
yeah. There's a big theme over the past few years around like the buyer journey. Like, how do you make it easier for them to buy? And you have the salesperson. I don't want to say adapt itself to the buyer journey as opposed to dictate the selling experience, so to speak. So I think that's interesting. So maybe before we dive into some of the themes we mentioned a bit earlier, um, curious to hear what would be something that you're currently particularly passionate about right now when it comes to selling in the B2B world. Anything that caught your attention recently, or that is in the back of your mind as you go around, you know, supporting and advising startups and SMBs.
Artificial intelligence.
Okay.
Don't even have to think about it. Prior to last June, to me, it was something foreign
Yeah.
because I didn't understand it. Right? When we don't understand things, we're scared. It's something new. It's changing. Just think about
We
your whole life.
undermine it to some extent, right? We're like, oh, it's nothing. It
Yeah,
was
it's
just
not going to be
fluff.
anything. You know what? That's what happened. It goes together with inflection points in business. The founder and CEO of Intel, I forgot his first name, but Jarvis is his last name. Bob Jarvis, maybe. He saw while they were building these processors that the personal computer, and he was able to look ahead. That was an inflection point. Let's switch from
Yeah.
making processors. Computer's going to be great, and we need to make it smaller. We need to be the first one. And they really had a stranglehold for years. They had a monopoly.
Yeah.
Deep
I mean, they were
Sync,
so far ahead of the curve, right? Which is
yeah. And
which they were able
even
to.
before, what was the ones that have come up since then, but it always was, you wanted to buy a laptop that had that dun, 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 Intel, or is that ESPN? I don't know. But
Yeah.
it was the Intel inside. But as leadership changed, they missed the inflection point with what's going on with AI, because they could have pivoted and seen AI, but they missed that opportunity, right? And instead of pivoting, companies like NVIDIA, right, took it from them. And now there's talk recently about people purchasing Intel. I mean, just think about that. That's wild.
20 years ago, or not even 20 years ago, 10 years ago, it wasn't even a concept that was going through people's mind, right? Buying Intel, or like Intel being obsolete. That's
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think is the case. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know the business enough, but
I mean, Elon's probably going to buy Intel and make sure it only buys, makes chips for Grok,
for Grok 3, yeah.
But here's the thing.
Self-mind, yeah.
It's artificial intelligence, Patrick, and that's why from the first time that you reached out to me and I started learning about what is Pod, what's an AL sales coach. Back in June, I was like, I'm not going to be stupid. I'm going to do my research, and I, like my 20-year-old who taught himself how to play piano professionally from YouTube. God, I went on YouTube, and then I stumbled on a course from forgot his first name. Maybe it's not Andrew Yang, but he's deep learning. The guy that started deep learning. He gave a free course, Stanford University, about the origins of AI. And he said it in such a simplistic way, and it just blew my mind. I said, I'm such an idiot. I could have learned this a year ago, right? It's the same thing. Like, I didn't understand Snapchat when it came out. On some level, I still don't. But I
Yeah.
made an account on Snapchat, spent a couple weeks on it because I had a client that needed to be on Snapchat. So if you really want to understand something in order to be able to determine, in order to be able to determine if it's good for you or not, and can it help you, you have to understand it. And I've been on that journey since then. And just in the last 24, 48 hours, Lovable, Replit, I'm building an app for the last 36 hours while I'm doing work and everything. And then I go back to it and I answer some questions. It's just like,
Yeah.
if
I think
you are in
that inherent curiosity of some people, and it translates itself to organizations as a whole. And I'm curious to hear your take on what does that mean for SMBs. And I see the organization that are going to be able to make progress faster are the ones that are going to be willing to experiment and embed artificial intelligence based tools in their day to day. A very good example of that is a very, very close friend of mine, not an engineer, right? I mean, he has an engineering training, but not a computer science or machine learning engineer. Started leveraging AI tools like Cursor, AI coding, tools to create, from text to image, image to video, et cetera, et cetera. He basically built a mobile app that is now on the App Store called TTYL all on his own, right? On his own, right? It took him like a few weeks, but I think
Talk to you later. I think I know that app.
Well, I mean, he launched it a few weeks ago, so
I've heard of it or something. Maybe I'm mixing it up with someone else. But I'm not that technical guy. I
agree.
I can learn stuff pretty quickly, but I don't know how to code. There's certain things I don't know how to do, but you know what? There are other people that know it, and they're giving information away for free.
Yeah.
And I truly believe, because we have spoken about this once or twice, or maybe you engaged on some of the thought leadership and content on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
If something is changing and you just keep on being on the sidelines, one or two things are going to happen. You and your company are going to be disrupted, or you can choose and be the one that's doing the disrupting.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's where I think small, medium-sized business have to think like that. Because if I have a company that adds some kind of component to a Keurig coffee machine, right? But I have a competitor 3 states away that does the exact same thing as me, but they are implementing some kind of AI tools that are specific to manufacturing, and there are plenty of them that do that.
Yeah.
And because of that, they're more efficient, they're more productive, their costs go down. You have a choice. Do you want to become Blockbuster, or do you want to be Netflix? And there could be plenty of Netflixes in your market. You just don't want to be that one or other Blockbusters that are sleeping at the wheel. And my brother-in-law, who's much more knowledgeable in technology than I am, told me 6 months ago, when closer to when I started learning about AI, and I asked him about certain things, and he said, AI has been around for years. What has happened is, from 6 months to 12 months was pretty quick. Now it's like that in a day, the amount of changes and new things that are coming out. I think this is the most exciting thing since when the internet came out. And I was in the stock market, at the time of that internet bubble, and I thought I had it made, helping people. But we're talking about sales, right? Helping people. Yeah, so I'm going to get excited.
But I think that's a good segue, because I think the initial question, what are you excited or passionate about, generally speaking, right now, is AI. It's top of mind. It'll, you have the opportunity to really disrupt or be a precursor to a new way of doing things. That's a general theme. When it comes to growth or sales or business development for small and medium businesses, right? We're not talking about the huge enterprise organization that have millions of dollars to put into, implementing AI tools or developing their own. But if you're an SMB in 2025 and you're, a growth leader, what do you think? How do you think about AI? How do you go about it? How is it changing the way that you think about your team, your processes, the way that you enable your team? Help me understand how you think growth leaders should think about it.
I mean, first and foremost, you want to have people that have a growth mindset, people that are coachable, right? Not the ones that think they know it better than anybody else. Because as you as a sales leader, your responsibility is not just crunching numbers, right? And going rah, 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 or screaming in someone's ear or going over them, giving them a hug, right? That's part of it. But you have to continuously identify who wants to make this not a job, not a sale as a transaction, who wants to build a relationship, whether they're going to be here in 2 years or not, who wants to grow as a person, as a professional. So a sales leader comes in and starts giving them training on simple things like ChatGPT and other things, that tools that they want to implement to make them make more money because they're going to be more productive. They're going to be able to, you know, identify certain things and all the things that the human element cannot be really replaced, and allow AI tools and technology to help. The ones that are not jumping on that train, you have to be able to identify that they're going to hold themselves back, and then your company.
When it comes to areas where you think it can make the biggest difference, right? You've mentioned, doing research or automating the non-human aspect of sales. You can think about the prospecting part of the value chain. You can think about, competitive landscape understanding, generating slides. You can think about doing automatic follow-up, recording calls. You can think about understanding deal strategy or kind of pipeline, navigating pipeline ambiguity. There's a lot of different ways where AI can be applied. What do you think is perhaps the one or two area that is most overvalued in terms of application of AI and growth? And what are the one or two areas that is perhaps undervalued that people should be thinking about a bit more proactively because it has a better or bigger impact on, the growth of an organization?
I'm so happy that you asked that in a two-pronged approach. Number one, automation is so overvalued because the focus in technology for AI is all about automating things. And this afternoon, I got an email to my email address, Elliot at my company name. I very rarely give out that email. Usually it's E, right? Or some other version.
Yeah.
Somehow this person, emailed me, and it's for an AI company that does cold outreach, right? And he says, "Hey, Brendan," and then goes to his pitch. That was Friday. Today he followed up. "Hey, Brendan, did you have a chance?" And I'm like, and this is one of the co-founders of an AI cold outreach company. Yeah. And respectfully candid, I replied, if you're a cold outreach company, there should be some kind of flag system that if the email address doesn't match up with the name, that's a problem. Because I'm talking to a computer now, not you. And I don't do business like that. So automating things without having checks and balances, I think, is the most overvalued and destructive thing at this point. I think it'll get better, but I think that's the most overvalued.
And do you see automation, or the most dangerous part of automation, when it comes to prospect interaction? In this case, it's an email that you send to a prospect, and that's dangerous because has to be a very nuanced and times personalized experience. How do you balance that with, I don't know, automating CRM updates, right? There's a lot of tools out there, the likes of an Attention, for example, that take your call transcripts and everything that you gather from customer interaction, and then update fields in your CRM. How do you think about automation in both of these use cases? Is one okay and the other one not as okay in your mind? Or
and that really plays into what is undervalued, is using automation in the right way. I have the same 24 hours in a day as any other salesperson, right? It's not how much more we could get done by automation. It's how much more we could get done that is impactful in the same amount of time. I posted before, I'd much rather be in a room of 3 influential people than in a ballroom of 1,000 potential customers, because it's impossible to connect and engage on a level that gets their attention. But what if there was a tool that could do it? What if there was a tool that can take all the information that's out there and then give it to you on a platter? They're not acting for you, but they're gathering all this information and doing the jobs like 1,000 Donnas. I'm a Suits fan, right? So Donna, the assistant. I had a sales assistant. Her name was Edith. She was like my on my hip, and she was in a different state. But when I gave her something, I didn't have to think about it. I knew it was done. And that allowed something else to go on in my head to be more present or to notice something in the salesperson's background, the potential client, and then start talking about that. That's where automation is undervalued, but is so powerful.
I think that's when you think about what, in its simplest expression, what the role of a salesperson is take in information and turn it into action, right? So, and the gap from information to action is gathering information, structuring it, synthesizing it, making sense out of it, and then defining what is the right action to take.
And even weeding out some of the stuff that's not necessary at that phase or that stage of the sales cycle.
Exactly. And I think that's where, the first 3 steps in, from information to action, I think this is where AI can do a tremendous job to assist and empower and enable sales or growth professional, because first of all, you don't have all the time in the world to look through 17 emails, 10 call recordings, read through the news. And that's something that artificial intelligence does at an incredible speed and accuracy. So I think I really like, it's a common theme, but not thinking of AI as a replacement of salespeople, but as a complement. Like you have the best salesperson by your side or the best assistant by your hip to help you both take care of the mundane work, help you think through what is it that you should do so that you can spend a lot more time in your day as a salesperson to build that relationship or focus on the truly human nature of the relationship, which is, remembering that they went on vacation in Tampa last week and you saw something.
You're speaking my language. You're speaking my language. Whatever can get me from hello, Patrick, to what happened to your cat last week. I know you mentioned it to me, and in background, I know you posted it that you're at the vet, right? But you're not going to say that. But it is altruistic, right? Because people want to do business with other people they can trust. Who do you trust? The people that care. How do you show someone that cares? You make it all about them. And I had this argument with someone yesterday. Well, it was an argument. It was a disagreement on LinkedIn. I posted an article that was put in the journal, Wall Street Journal. And I know you commented on it or reacted something about the ickiness of repeating someone's name multiple times in a conversation. And I agree if it's not authentic. But if you do it in an authentic way, you're not just doing it like a robot, it doesn't feel bad. It feels real. Yesterday, I have a round table of some people. So right now I have like a trio, a branding guy, an audio voice guy, and I'm the sales business guy. And as we're talking about this, we were grilling the branding guy about what's branding. And through the process of that, I just spit something out and we've been working on it. We've been refining it. If you think of a company like a tree, there's the brand. The brand identity is the roots. Then the trunk is the brand messaging. So without the root and the trunk, you don't have a mess. You don't know what the core, you don't know what you're talking about. You can't feel it. You can't believe it. And people can tell when you're fake. And then the branches that grow, that's the marketing. It spreads out all these different areas. Great. But if you are 3 blocks away, it looks like just a gray blob. Advertising gets the colors of the leaves that come out. But then what happens next? You got a great brand. People understand what you do. You're marketing it after the right audience, and then you're advertising it in the right places with the right messages. And then it bears fruit. Fruit is the sales. Without the right branding, without the right marketing and advertising, you're not going to have good fruit. You're going to have the crab apple. You're not going to have the Michigan apple, the Fuji apple, right? You're not going to
Yeah.
have the good ones. Artificial intelligence, I believe, can do everything up until sales, because that is still a human to human relationship. Yeah, transactional sales, go on tied to the website. I do it. I don't talk to a human being until there's something wrong and you can't get someone on the phone, right?
Yeah.
But when you're talking about small and medium-sized companies, that it is a relationship. You don't want a transactional sale. It's continuous sale. It's a contract. You want to be able to upsell them. It has to be the stages to go up. And if your company does the right job, then all those tools are at the hands of a salesperson to have those conversations and then close. But if it's all over the place and it's not systematically organized and put in front of you like a smorgasbord of information, it's wasted money, it's wasted opportunity. AI, I am learning, can do that. You just have to know what tools, because there's so much garbage out there.
Yeah.
And that comes down to people. If you believe in the people and they have the experience, I know some of the people that you have interviewed and spoken to, been in the field for a long time. I'm glad that you brought up a little of my history. I went through the ranks. I learned all the things as an AE, what not to do in a boiler room setting and the different sales methodologies. And then I got to being a sales rep, and then I learned from other people. And that's where it goes back to the growth mindset, even better, an evolving mindset.
Yeah. An interesting segue talking about the work that you've done as a sales leader, growing team. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what do you see are the biggest challenges that growth teams face right now when it comes to growing their team. We've always talked about the talent on the war on talent, or the difficulty retaining people, especially in sales. What do you think are the biggest challenges that sales leaders are facing when it comes to growing their team? So attracting, onboarding, enabling their sales force.
I'll reframe the question that I get all the time, because with small and medium-sized companies, I do work with a lot of startups. But even the small and medium-sized companies, 5, 10, 15 years, I treat them as startups, right? That chapter is over. Now let's build on that chapter and see what went wrong and how do we grow you. So it's the same sort of mindset. But I'll say this, it's the same question a lot of them ask me. How do I know how do I know a good salesperson? Right? How do I identify? What should I be looking for? There's no script, pun intended. We're talking about sales. Maybe that'll be a segue to another thing, but there's no perfect answer other than there's one attribute that, it has to be a hard worker. They have to be dedicated. That's any kind of job. But there's one attribute, characteristic, skill, not even a skill. It's more of an attribute that every salesperson that is successful long-term has, and it's really difficult to learn it. You either have it or you don't, and you just automatically learn it from your parents, from teachers, from people around you, is likability. And then the follow-up question is well, how do you determine what likability is? It's very simple. And this is not my thing. I think I heard it from, one of my managers. If your flight is delayed and you're by that gate and all the restaurants are closed and you're sitting there and you got another 2 hours, right? Hey, I'll throw even more. The Wi-Fi is down, right? But you're sitting next to somebody and you are just enjoying the conversation. And you're talking about life and you're talking about work, and you appreciate them listening to you, and you really feel that they're being authentic. That is a winning salesperson. Methodology, product knowledge, close-ended, open-ended questions, that can all be taught. But if you enjoy just sitting and engaging with someone, that can't, be taught. So that's the number one thing. In today's day and age,
number one thing as it pertains to when it comes to growing the team, focus on finding people that are not focus on, but like be on the lookout for people that have a high likability.
Absolutely. Dave Kirpin wrote a book on likability. He had likable media with his thumbs. Great guy. But in the modern world, I always tell people I'm an old school salesperson operating a modern world. And I love that. I just, really grab it by the neck,
Yeah.
and really say that. But I mean it because I think the biggest challenge of hiring and scaling a team um, is how do you figure that out as quickly as possible? How do you identify if they have that likability as quickly as possible? Assuming, they have some, experience and you go through the ATS and you get all the resumes and everything, right?
Yeah.
It's not easy and it's a whole space that needs disruption, right? Save that for
Yeah.
another day.
Mm.
It comes down to, and AI can help with that actually,
No.
putting criteria together based on who you're talking to. It all comes down for how you ask the questions. Because as a sales manager, you're selling someone or you're giving them the opportunity to sell you. So if you ask certain questions, not the stupid question, give me an example where you were challenged and how did you overcome it? No. You're a salesperson. You want to hire a salesperson? What was your best month? How did that feel? Are they excited when they talk about it? What was the best thing that you learned from your last 3 sales managers? What was the worst things that you learned from your own past, 3 sales managers? Because everything else in experience can really be taught, but the core, the essence of, do you want to go to battle with this guy or girl, right? Do you want them to represent you at a meeting for a $500 million contract, but you can't go because you're laid up in the hospital with a broken leg, God forbid?
Yeah.
Those are the questions that you have to be asking yourself.
And that pertains specifically to hiring the right people. I really like that because I think that's a whole, having hired my team and hired in previous companies as well, hiring is very, very tough, right? Because it's not just about the hard skills, particularly in sales, but it's most often about the soft skills, right? The personality, the mindset, the attitude, the likability, etc. And in startups and in SMBs, I think it is important because a bad hire could be a bad apple that can destroy a company as a whole. So I really like that. But if we push it one step beyond, let's say you found the right person, you're a growth leader in an SMB business doing B2B sales. How do you think about, onboarding? What are the main areas you'd focus on to make sure that onboarding is done in the most efficient and effective way, ultimately to get that salesperson that is, yes, very likable, but go from not knowing anything about the space to being able to close a first deal in as quickly as possible?
I think it comes to, I don't think it's you're not spending your time smartly if you have a different onboarding book and training program for every single salesperson. There has to be a core. But just like a startup deck has a core story and vision, but you change the narrative depending on who your stakeholder is. Same thing with sales. You can have the core message of what you do, but you may talk a little bit more softly to someone that talks like that. Or you may start cursing like crazy, like Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Because that's how they relate. You can do the same thing with onboarding. When you manage, you're not managing robots, you're managing people. And I'll never forget, someone asked me, a client asked me, because he was trying to view me as coming in, and I did end up being like a fractional sales leader for 90 days, changed a lot of things, then helped them hire someone to replace me full time. Are you more of a, drill sergeant, or are you more of a kumbaya type of manager? And I said, it depends on who I'm managing, right? You can mirror people in sales. You're also supposed to mirror people in management. So having the structure, both visually and in computers, it can have the core, but it's not as cookie cutter as people believe it should be. I remember going through training for Solomon Smith Barney when I first passed my Series 7 and Series 63. It was 42, 43 people thrown into Hartford, Connecticut for 2 weeks at a Holiday Inn. And everything was the same. But then years later, I went to a different company that it was 5 people that were training, and I was being trained to be a director of sales. And you had some one-on-one, so it was with a group, but then it was one-on-one, so it had a little bit of both. It's that balance. I
Yeah.
hope I answered your question.
I think it makes a ton of sense. And I think that is it touches the theme of enablement as a whole, but I'm a big believer in a hybrid approach between programmatic and real-time enablement. I think there's a place, to your point, for that core onboarding playbook, so to speak. Hey, you go through the first week, you talk about the product, you talk about the messaging, you talk about the sales methodology. You're going to get that into salespeople's head. They understand what is a process, how to operate, what is the cadence, all that stuff, right? That is something that can be taught, once and maybe refreshed every 6 months or every year. Makes a ton of sense. But the reality is, and this is something I realized when I first started Pod, is at the end of the day, out of sight, out of mind, and reps are more likely to are most likely to forget 90% of what was discussed during that first week. They're most likely to forget what they learned in that first week of onboarding when it's time to just work on a deal or like prepare ahead of a meeting. And I think this is balancing the programmatic enablement with real-time enablement, which in my book is coaching. Right? This is where like managers and leaders come in to really understand, okay, well, this is the playbook, this is the skeleton. Where are you good? Where are there areas of of improvement or areas of opportunities for you? And let's actually talk through how to build a proper coaching plan to help you get there, whether through, role play if you have a hard time getting the pitch out, or maybe it's around deal strategy or pipeline execution. And we'll help you think through how to prioritize different deals or how to optimize your buying committee. So I really like that because it is the true nature of learning as a whole, but particularly in sales, it's not just the process, the rigid, the script, but it's also, okay, how do we support and enable and train the human behind the title?
So you keep throwing out that word, enablement. Let's touch on that for a second, shall we?
For sure.
So you brought up some of the things that I remember I implemented after experiencing myself. If possible, part of the hiring process should be allow the candidate to sit in maybe a sales meeting, a sales call next to a salesperson and observe, and then get the opinion of the salesperson, right? There was one company that I implemented a peer-to-peer incentive program where if a salesperson was helping another salesperson that was just coming on board, for the first couple of months, they got a percentage of their sales of commission, right? Because overall, it's going to help everybody. It's not a competition. It also helped you as a sales manager weed out the ones that are all about themselves that you don't want to be part of the team. I'll go back to one more thing. I mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk. He happens to be a mentor of mine and a friend. I don't agree with everything that he says, and I'm saying it right to you, Gary, if you see this.
He's saying a lot of things as well. So,
but in the last couple of years, which isn't a change, he has changed a little bit. But if you go back to 10 years, 20 years ago on some of his videos of him talking to someone, he is looking that person right in the eye. And you can feel him making that other person think and feel that they're the only one there. There's no one else around. Even though he's got video cameras and multiple staff and a team of 24 that are all Gary V team. But at that moment, and I've experienced it myself at, different conferences, at the Outbound conference, at the green room, that he gave me more time than I ever thought he would. That is genuine authenticity, right? That is making that person important. Anybody can do that. And that can be trained, right? You can coach someone to make someone else feel like, I want you to be successful, the new hire. And this is a salesperson that eventually going to be on the same team. Because if you've ever been in sales, when you're part of a family, when you're part of a sales team that you each want to see the other one successful, it makes coming to work so much more pleasurable.
The good old bullpen days. We're in the trenches together, all trying to pound the phone and get people.
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Like anything, there's good things and then there's challenging things.
Yeah, agreed. But I like the point about like peer-to-peer coaching, because coaching doesn't always have to be a manager with the team, but
Mm,
you could have a more experienced salesperson with a more junior person, or the I think the sales leaders that I've seen implement the best cultures are one where everyone contributes to the coaching. And,
right.
once a week they review a couple of calls and everyone has the opportunity to share comments and feedback and learn from one another and share their tricks. And I think that speaks to a broader shift from sales being a very competitive
Yeah.
environment where like you want to safeguard your accounts and this is my territory, this is yours, towards more like, hey, well, if I help you, it's not gonna be a detriment to my quota or my
But that
ability to
doesn't
close this deal.
even get off the ground without the manager, the sales leader,
It starts from
believing
the
it.
top for sure.
And I
Exactly.
experienced this the end of 2024. And it wasn't intentional. And as I'm hearing you talk about it, I'm getting excited. Like, when
Mhm.
can I implement this? Because I partnered with Startup Grind. There was a pitch battle. 90 minutes beforehand, I offered to coach the different founders pitching their startups. It was supposed to be one-on-one, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, tell me your pitch, 5 minutes, answer my questions, 5 minutes of feedback. But everyone just started crowding around, and the energy, other founders were chipping in and they were learning from things that had nothing to do with their industry. There was some
Yeah.
environmental this, some other guy, and then they were all helping each other out. And now experiencing that, I'm getting goosebumps because it really, it really, really motivated me and energized me. And now I'm hearing what you're saying. It's essentially the same thing, but it,
Yeah.
it, it begins with the sales leader. If they want to do it, that's the only way they're going to do it. So
Yeah.
if there's any change that's going to happen in a sales team, it has to be the sales leader. And they have to feel empowered. They have the authority within a certain amount of resources, of time, that ownership, the people on top of them, are going to allow them. Obviously, you have to, pitch it to them and
Yeah.
sell it to them and propose it. But this is going to make our team better because of this. And
Yeah.
then once they get the approval, and then it's easier because who's going to say no to their sales manager, right? You better buy in. If you don't, everyone else is,
Yeah.
taking off, they're tripling their quota or whatever, and you're not. It's because they didn't buy in. So let's replace it, with someone
Yeah.
else.
I think what's interesting in what you're saying as well is the contrast between, in what we've discussed so far, between artificial intelligence, sales methodology frameworks, data, automation. I think what's interesting is that some people are diehard. Uh, you go into one direction, like automation is what's gonna move the needle in your ability to grow. Going back to the initial question about like how do you grow your team or grow your
Mm-hmm.
sales organization or grow your business as a whole. Some people think that, hey, well, if you do automation and you do personalization at scale with an AI SDR, then that's the way to go, right? And people don't believe that. And there's debate all over the place. Then the people think it's all about the sales methodology and the repeatable process. And I'm maybe I'm because I'm not that confrontational of a guy, but I feel like the right mix, the right solution at the end of the day ends up being a mix of all these things, right? And yes, you need
Absolutely.
to have a process. There's a bare minimum. Yes, you need, and that's the wood, so to speak. And then you need to have proper tools to automate or reduce admin work, and that's the oxygen. But at the end
Mm.
of the day, the match in this fire, I think, ends up being the culture, and not just the culture, but the type of mindset and attitude that leaders kind of nurture within their team, and that could be coaching, that could be transparency, that can be um, the ability to care, about your prospects and your colleagues. And I think that's the healthy mix at the end of the day, what makes for a thriving, high performing sales organization. There's not one band-aid that is going to solve all your problems because you threw $100 per user per month in a software that is going to change everything. It comes with more broadly change within how you operate, who you operate with, and uh, what is the technology you bring in.
Listen, business is war, right? So you're not going to go to
Yeah.
battle without the right plan and the right team in place, and you're not going to do it without getting the research done. But there's a way to do it that's not so complicated. And with AI, that makes it even more simple. I remember reading the biography of Steve Jobs. He used to say no to everything and tell his team, dumb it down. It's not stupid enough. It's simple. It's called the 3-step or 3-click rule, right? If something takes 5, make it 3. So yeah, there's all these things. There's recording of your voice. There's email marketing. There's data enrichment. There's all this stuff. Oh my God, what do I do? There are tools out there that can take all of this and make it look like a cupcake here. And then all you have to do is decide, how much am I going to eat this morning? How am I going to eat this afternoon? And the analogy that I'm making is, I know that Pod is one of those tools, an AI tool that doesn't replace things. It just takes everything and just brings it all together in a way that is articulate and simplistic enough that you can actually do something with it. It's tangible. It's like, I'm a big fan of The Office, right? The Office, the TV show, and I love it. One of the best lines
before you move further, the US version or the UK version? I'm just asking for a friend.
There's a UK version.
The original Office is from the UK version.
Sometimes the OG is not the GOAT.
I got my answer.
But kudos to Ricky Gervais.
For sure.
That
for sure,
without him, The Office would not have been what it is, what it is in folklore today. But
for sure,
the one thing that I remember, when there was a surplus, you remember that episode? There's a surplus, and if they don't use it at the end of the month or end of the year, then the next year they're not going to have the same amount of money. So the accountant comes in, Oscar, and starts explaining it to the manager. And he says, explain it to me like an 8-year-old. And then he does, right? And then after that, the joke is, okay, now explain it to me like a 5-year-old. But if you think about it that way, what's the goal here? Is the goal for you to be able to go from a 8-stage sales cycle from 1 to 4 as quickly as possible? The goal is to build that relationship, close the sale, and grow that relationship and account and help them grow, and then just becomes bigger, and it just keeps rolling. If that's the goal, you got to be a real idiot. And I'm saying this, right? You got to be a real idiot as a business owner or a sales manager to not be open to learning, how can I simplify things in order for my guys and girls, gals, women, whatever, to make it easy as possible for them to sell, whether it's educational selling, consultative selling, or, storytelling selling, whatever it is. Make it as easy as possible. AI can do that. Don't be scared.
I think that's the different, go full circle to what you mentioned at the beginning, the difference between automation and AI as a tool for automation and AI as a thought partner. And like you alluded to, I think I really like to think about Pod. We call it a sales coach, but as a thought partner to the reps, right? They're not going to do the work for you, but they're going to, the Pod is going to gather information across all your different systems, and it's going to tell you or give you hints and guidance on which deal you should prioritize, what are the right actions for you to take. And I think that's the nuance between, helping or pushing a rep in the right direction and making their life easier, but ultimately letting that final decisions be the salesperson's decision, as opposed to just replacing their job altogether, which, like you've mentioned, and I would agree with it, is something that is never 100% possible in sales, because people buy from people that they trust and respect and like.
My dad.
Go ahead.
We started with my dad. Let me just sort of end it with my dad. He was a great person. He was my best friend. He was my hero. He was an advisor. He used to work for the IRS. Then he went private as an accountant, and he really helped people out. People used to go to him for guidance. And it wasn't until he died when I was 19, and it wasn't until many years later that all of a sudden I started thinking of ways in other people's lives and businesses. If I was in their shoes, how would I make the best decision? Number one, you got to have all the facts, right? how do you get all the facts? You ask questions, you do research. But if you can get all that like this because of technology, Pod's my wingman, right?
Yeah.
To get all that information and to give me different success ratios, and based on, hey, I was able to figure out who the real decision maker is in these 5 companies that are in the same area in terms of sales and revenue. What are the chances that this new company works the same way? Well, let me see. Oh, 65%. So let's not waste time. Let's try to focus on that. And I think Pod sort of gives people the ability to do that.
Gives you the information, the ammunition to be able to then,
whether this is going to make it into the video or not. For 30 years, I've been in sales. For the last 20, I've been looking for the opportunity to have some kind of responsibility where I can take on the title of evangelist, chief evangelist, growth evangelist, because what's evangelism? It's spreading the word of something that can help other people. And the reason why I wanted that opportunity is because one of my mentors is Guy Kawasaki, second chief evangelist for Apple, chief evangelist for Canva right now. And he really tells about, you can't make that up if you really feel that. And I've been searching for something for Pod. I wish I had Pod 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. I'm not going to help someone else have an easier time and become a better salesperson. It goes back to the day that I never thought would ever happen. I was a sales guy. I was making a good living, and I loved it. I knew people's birthdays. I was invited to some of my clients' weddings. My manager came to me and he said, Elliot, I think it's time for you to become a director of sales. Never managed anybody before. And I said, no. He said, why not? I said, because I don't want to miss this. I don't want to miss the interaction, the enablement, the engagement, the relationships of people that I care about that I haven't seen in 3 months go back. And then they show me what I sold them and I see their pride. It gives me that feeling of fulfillment. And he said, give it 90 days. It'll be so much better. Just trust me. And I did. When I realized, Patrick, being a manager, it's not for everybody. I was living through my salespeople vicariously. So I was helping the customers through them. I was helping them become better salespeople, better professionals, and it 10x'd the feeling of fulfillment that I got as a salesperson. You wanted to round it up with something. Go ahead.
No.
Rapid fire? We got to do a rapid fire.
I have to do rapid fire. But I was going to say, I think the analogy, not the analogy, but the example that you're giving of the feeling of being an individual contributor between that and being a sales director is the same one in a sports team between being a player and a coach. And, for people who have been on both sides, they tend to say that the feeling is equivalent or at times even greater when you see your team succeed, or your player
certainly
succeed.
If it's a player or an employee that is seeking that coaching, that has that evolving mindset, that I don't want to just learn from my mistakes, but I want to learn from other things. My youngest mentor is my 21-year-old son. Over the summer, we built something together. He's got this creative juices, and I never looked at things from the perspective of a creative in terms of design. And even though I know that all logos have 3 colors, I never thought about it. And since he has taught me that, now if I would have been the 50-year-old guy saying, "Oh, what does this 20-year-old Gen Z kid know?" I wouldn't have even gotten there. Yeah. I've learned things from you, Patrick. Won't tell you what they are, but I've learned some things.
Exactly. Keep it a secret.
Let's do a rapid fire. Come on. Let's do a rapid fire.
Let's wrap things up. A few questions, brief answer.
Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, okay, here we go. Montreal Canadiens.
Funny story. My wife is from Montreal. I'm from Detroit. My kids are huge hockey fans growing up in Florida. And even though they won the championship last year, they've always bled red. Not because that's the color of their blood, but because of Montreal Canadiens and Detroit. Okay, go ahead.
Here we go. Okay, so rapid fire questions. What is the one piece of advice you'd wish someone had given you when you started in sales?
Shut up. Listen more. That's it.
Love this.
Talk less, listen more. And for someone who has ADD, that is a challenge, but it's so worth it.
Very powerful. Sales script or improvisation?
Both. Just like I said before, there's a core, there's a sales script, but it's not.
Yeah.
I can tell when I'm talking to customer service and they're reading a script.
Yeah.
Right. So I have that core message, those bullet points, and let them go off, off script to make the script yours. Then it's not reading a script. So both. Can I say that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no rule. It's rapid fire rules.
Oh, right. I love it.
So what about I probably know where you're going to lean here, but SMB versus mid-market versus enterprise selling.
SMB and mid-market. 99.7% of every single company in the United States of America are small and mid-sized companies. Only 0.3% are major corporations, and everyone's going for that whale.
Love it. I love it.
You can make the same amount of money, shorter sales cycle by 10 small and mid-sized companies, spending 2 years going after, I don't know, IBM. And what are the chances you're going to get it in the end? As soon as someone that you have a relationship with is just fired, someone else comes in, and all that work is done, for nothing.
I love it. Elliot, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate the thoughtfulness, the anecdotes.
We should make this a weekly thing,
People, if it was weekly, people would be tired of seeing my face and probably yours. So, there's value in scarcity, but thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Maybe as a last question, I know that you're really active on LinkedIn, on social media as a whole. Where can people find you or follow you?
Main place I do everything is on LinkedIn. Thought leadership, I talk about it. Everything that I'm working on, I learned so much from LinkedIn. It's not what it used to be pre-Microsoft days, but it's still a lot that you can get value from it. So just look up Elliot Grossbard or just Growthlistic, and any of the other social channels, it's the Elliot 1T, ELLIOT, spelled out ONET, because how do you spell my name, Patrick?
Elliot with 1 T.
There you go, my man.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and for everyone out there. I am Patrick, the founder and the CEO of Pod. We're having amazing and inspiring conversation with a great sales leader about what is it to do B2B sales, from the people, the process, the tool, the technology. So stay tuned.
Sales is easy, right? Sales is easy if you listen, you learn, and you're open to using tools that will help you sell better. Absolutely. Don't complicate things. I got 50 books that I've read in the last 2 years on my shelf, read every single one. Just learn a couple of tools. Thank you, Patrick.
Love it. Thank you, Elliot. I appreciate it.